Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I am here with Dani Hatch and Mark LaRocco. Guys,
hello.
How's it going?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, good. Are you excited about today's show? I'm excited about today's show.
I just about purchased like lace gloves and a fancy ball gown and everything in honor of today's episode. I've been super excited for it.
But what does that have to do with Marcel the Shell?
Well, it's just, it's a refined, artsy kind of movie. That's how I dressed up when I went to go see it this morning.
Good point. Yes. No, what Dani's referring to is she's giving a sneak preview of today's episode, which is going to include a few different things, including Marcel the Shell, which is going to be kind of a fun thing we're going to talk about. But then I think the bulk of the episode, I don't know, we could almost kind of call this one Dani's Revenge, because... because Mark and I, we've taken so much time talking about music and kind of geeking out down our little rabbit holes there. And now I think most of this episode we're probably going to turn over to the skilled hands of Dani Hatch to let us know what is going on in the world of Jane Austen movies. And there are not a few of those. I mean, it's like a full-blown genre, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, no, it's its own thing, and like because it's its own genre, there are like subgenres within it. There's been a lot of remixes kind of on it, and you can kind of categorize a certain kind of romance to be an Austen kind of romance, even if it wasn't based on an Austen book. So
yeah,
it'll be fun.
No, because as I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking about not just movies that I've seen, but books that I've read, because a lot of the books that you're required to read in, or at least that I was required to read in high school, they seem, because to be honest, I'm not sure that I actually read any Jane Austen books, but I read several that I would consider Austen adjacent, right? Like Jane Eyre, I think, was one of the ones that sprung to mind as kind of the same era, Victorian novel, but as I'm sure Dani, you would say not the same thing, right? And so,
but it is like my favorite book of all time.
Really?
Oh my goodness, I love Jane Eyre.
Well, I'm excited to hear why that is your favorite book of all time, and not just because I'm an English teacher, but definitely partially because I'm an English teacher. But before we jump into all that kind of stuff, what's going on in the news? Anybody got any news?
Well,
any more births? Has anybody else had any children?
I don't think so.
No.
Unless Mark was surprised with twins a week or two later.
No. That would have been pretty amazing after just hearing one heartbeat all those times to have twins. Two hearts beating
They're
as
just
one.
synced.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're identical, right? I mean, wouldn't they have the same heartbeat? Wouldn't that
They
be?
should. That's a good point.
Is that a thing? I don't know. I've never had twins. Never been a twin,
Neither have I. So no news?
No news. I mean, really, just Netflix is actually marketing The Gray Man, right?
Oh,
that's the news.
Well, good for them.
I mean,
it's
I sent you guys that article about that had the
yes,
penny lead.
Yes, you did.
They got a good chuckle
Yeah,
out of
it said Netflix changes tack with marketing spree for $200 million film, and the lead is Netflix Incorporated is trying a new approach in marketing its next big film, telling people it's coming out, which is. You think that's obvious,
so
right? Like, I mean, that's how people find out about movies. But Netflix, it just seemed like for a while, just assumed that everybody knew what they were going to be showing, and that everybody has Netflix, and so they're trying this new promotion to advertise on everywhere they can, like major sporting events and billboards and TV, regular TV advertising spots, and so it's a very expensive. A $200 million movie? I can't remember. It's
No, I think 200 is the word. 200 is the figure that I remember.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of unprecedented for them. Not just in that they're marketing their actual products, but that they're actually spending that much money.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to see the movie yet. I might still check it out. But I guess this is. I don't know. Is this a sign of them just expanding, or do they feel like this is something they have to do because are they trailing the competition? What do you guys think?
Oh, it's reflecting the competition for sure, because I believe there were like Disney Plus and Paramount Plus Super Bowl ads, I remember those running. And I was surprised when I first read it because, like, this article, because I've been seeing advertisements for, like, the Adam Project, for Persuasion, you know, that's how I knew these things were coming out. But I think it was just in theaters and just on social media where I saw those.
Mhm.
So I think that is interesting where it's, like, expanding to billboards and cable networks and stuff like that.
It's all coming full circle, I guess.
Yeah. They've got to try something after their stock dives and how much money they've
Yeah.
lost over the last year. So
Yeah,
And how much
why not- why
content
not?
they've lost because, like I've said before, like any new streaming platform is going to take from Netflix because that's kind of been the home base for everything until it's taken away, right?
Well, and you know, one thing I've noticed as I've been kind of browsing over the last few weeks, especially, is that I'm seeing a lot of repeat, uh, how to call it, like the same movies that I see pop up in the regular Netflix rotations. I'm also seeing when I'm scrolling through Amazon Prime, and I just thought that was kind of odd because it feels like not only because I've complained before about how Netflix just, at least in terms of what they promote on like their main page, it's like they have 7 different categories that have just reshuffled the same dozen movies or TV shows in different orders.
Mm.
But now it seems like some of the same, at least the movies, right? Because not the native Netflix specials or TV shows like Stranger Things, but I'll see like the same movies available on Netflix that I'm seeing over on Amazon Prime. And I kind of thought the idea was that
well,
they wouldn't have that
It's
overlap,
like
right?
exclusive.
I've had that
Yeah.
complaint too because I mean we have Peacock and Hulu and Amazon Prime and Netflix, and there's so many movies that are available on 2 of those platforms, and you're like, what's the
Yeah.
point? And then when there's a movie, you're like, well, this movie should be available somewhere, and you do a search, and you have to pay for it. It's kind of annoying. You're like, well, I'm paying for
Yeah.
5 different services, and I have to now rent this movie. Sometimes I just go get them at the library, you know.
Oh, yeah, no,
library.
I go library all the way.
Yeah, we do. Like Little
Wow.
Women, we checked that out at the library last week, and it was just the DVD copy from the library, and got it for free for a week. So
You remember
I
that
should have
stuff,
you check
kids?
and I should have you guys check and see if they've got Chuck at the library. I watched the first season because I think we had actually bought it a while ago, but then when I went to go on to like season 2, 3, 4, the only way I think it's actually through HBO Max or something like that was they like somehow they had that property. So I haven't been able to. I mean, I've seen the show before, so it's not like I haven't. I know what happens, but I wanted to rewatch and re-experience some of my old adventures with Chuck and the crew. But well, I don't have a piece of news, but I do have something to share that I think you guys will appreciate. I have to give credit for this. I have to cite a different podcast that I was listening to earlier today. It's a favorite podcast called the GLOP podcast. It's GLOP, kind of a pop culture related or at least adjacent podcast, and they brought up an interesting fan theory that I think you guys will appreciate about Maverick. So have you guys heard any fan theories about Maverick yet?
I don't think so.
Nothing yet, because you're gonna love this.
Okay.
So the fan theory
Ready.
is, and I guess this is, there's a degree of spoiler content here, but you know, that the Maverick character Mitchell actually dies at the beginning of the movie when he tests that first jet, right? Because the program's going to get shut down. He goes and he takes off anyway, and he breaks the 10 Mach 10 or whatever, Mach 11 or whatever it was. And so the theory goes that he actually dies. Like when you see everything, this plane kind of shuddering and then everything goes black, he dies. And so
And,
when
and
we
we
see
never
him,
see exactly how he got himself out of that situation.
right, we just see him walk into the diner afterwards, and he's
Which
like,
I
"Where am
loved.
I?" Oh yeah, no, it was a great moment. And the kid says, "You're on planet Earth," and everybody gets a laugh out of it. But then this theory is that he's actually dead at this point, and that the rest of Maverick is kind of his posthumous, trying to go and resolve the unresolved threads of his life, namely making peace with Goose's son, and
And Haley Joel Osment comes in and tries to walk him through the whole thing.
So if you were wondering why he kept popping up, now you know. So,
That's funny.
yeah, but I just thought that's a pretty cool fit. I mean, granted, I think that it seems like about 75% of fan theories do seem to be having something to relate with main characters being dead the whole time, um, or dying at certain points in movies. But I did think this one was a pretty cool one that applied.
That is
So
Yeah,
funny.
interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, you
yeah,
think of all the unbelievable things that happen for the rest of the movie that are just everything has to go exactly right. You know, it is funny to think about.
yeah,
And
for
he has
sure.
a similar moment too at the end where you don't exactly see how he gets safely to the ground too. Interestingly,
Oh,
you
So really, he died
well,
in a way you
twice.
that's
see another character like he's parachuting out, but you don't see it with him, and everybody assumes that. Well, I don't want to do spoilers because there might be 3 or 4 people out there who haven't seen this movie, but anyway.
yes, yes, very good. Well, so let's transition from that into the movies that are a little more new
Because
right
I have an
now.
important announcement with that. Because I
With
have
with
recently talked about my relationship status with movies. It's been
oh yeah,
complicated for a very long time, and I'm happy to announce that movies and I are back together. We're happy, we're thriving. This was a great week. I was.
okay. So is this restored relationship due to the movies that you watched and are planning to report on for this episode, or is it something else?
No, 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 no. It's absolutely that. Because I don't know. I was losing faith. I still, don't have faith in those, film juggernauts because they don't know what they're doing. But it's like, the A24, Blumhouse, your Bleecker Street. Like these guys know what they're doing. Like these are people who grew up loving movies, and they're making movies that people will love. And
Yeah.
it's just happiness all around.
You just perfectly described the experience that I had watching Coda at the end of a week of watching Oscar bait movies. That's the same way that
That's
I felt
fair.
last year. No,
Yeah. No,
really,
no, no, no.
and
I
and
believe you.
because you kind of have that hope and optimism restored and think that, oh, okay, this is what this is supposed to be. This is not supposed to be just drama and backbiting and kind of the machinations of evil and wicked people, but it's you can have a fun and happy experience with the movies too. So that's good to know, and I'm looking forward to finding out some more of the details behind that.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, I am actually guessing with almost 100% certainty that the first movie we're going to talk about is a big part of that newfound joy.
Easily.
So Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
Say
The
that a couple more
popular
times.
yeah, Marcel the Shell with shoes on. Marcel the Shell with shoes on is
So hard.
the new. Well, I guess would you? I don't know if you call it a mockumentary because it's not. I mean, it's presented as a documentary, but it's almost more of just kind of a style choice than since the shell doesn't actually exist in reality.
Yeah.
I don't think we could call it a documentary.
No, they called it a mockumentary, like an animated mockumentary, basically. But they're saying like the spin on it is that like a mockumentary usually paints your protagonist in a not so favorable light, whereas this one, you really connect with the character and it's
Right,
more
right.
heartwarming.
So the whole premise of this, so it's based on a series of much shorter films, little shorts on YouTube, and it's kind of a interesting intersection of animation and live action because this is not, what I heard going into it was that it was going to be stop motion animation, and it is,
Yeah.
but it's not like your Nightmare Before Christmas type stuff where the whole experience is stop motion. It's you have stop motion characters and other elements that play out alongside human characters shot in real time. And of course, Marcel the Shell is the main character. He's just this tiny little 1-inch shell. He's got like one little eyeball popping out of the top, out of the hole on the top. And he's got a little animated mouth and a couple of shoes that he moves around on. And Jenny Slate does the voice performance. So it's a talking shell. And I guess the simple premise is that Marcel lives with his grandmother, Isabella Rossellini, I believe, is the voice of the grandma. The two of them are in basically an Airbnb house in, I believe, the California Bay Area, and so it's kind of, like I said, kind of like this mockumentary documentary presentation of their day-to-day lives that eventually kind of settles in on the question of Marcel wanting to find his parents and some of his kind of more extended family, because as we learned early on in the film, there was a moment with some of the previous human tenants of the home where there was a big separation, and some of the other shells and some of the other characters that lived in the home together were separated, and so we kind of start off just following day-to-day life of Marcel, and eventually it kind of turns into a question of, oh, how can we find Marcel's parents? Is it going to be possible? And could Leslie Stahl and the crew of 60 Minutes possibly help with this crusade? And it is just as sweet and cute and quirky as you'd expect. Lots of very, very subtle humor. I mean, it's a very understated movie. The performance, so Jenny Slate does the voice, and it's this very kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of even how to describe it. Like it's a cutesy little voice, but also of like this shell that's very kind of thoughtful and just trying to make sense of the world, and so you get like kind of this unique perspective, and it's just this kind of fun little it comments. I mean, it comments on a lot of things. There's definitely themes of friendship and themes of family. There's also, because they actually play out the popularity of the YouTube series. So Marcel's there, but then the human who's basically living at the house temporarily is now. This is the same guy who's the director of the film, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the one who's appearing, and that's Dean Fleischer Camp, and so the two of them are interacting quite a bit, and so there's also how was I going to say it? So when Fleischer Camp puts out the videos, there's some commentary on the social media phenomenon and popularity, because these little videos are so popular that people start coming to the house and taking selfies, and so there's definitely some social commentary, but also more of just kind of your sweet traditional morals and family and stuff. And like I said, a lot of it is driven about trying to get Marcel together with the rest of his family, and that forms the crux of a loose plot that's really more just kind of about the cuteness of this day-to-day existence of this character. Mm-hmm. Dani, do you concur?
Absolutely.
Sweet, cutest movie of the year so far.
The cutest thing I've probably ever seen, and I don't even know where to begin with this, because I have like the things that I love about it, just like from knowing things about film, but then also just personally, because I feel like I was the perfect target audience for this. So the shorts is they came out kind of during the era of YouTube and the internet that I grew up with. So it was like, after MySpace and, Facebook started kicking off. So like, it was kind of this age where like, things were still kind of wild, but it was a little more honed in, and like a lot of creative people were seeing the opportunities on YouTube. And I mean, the people who created it, Dean Fleischer Camp and Jenny Slate, like, they're professional creatives, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all like, hey, here's this funny idea. Jenny Slate was like playing around with this voice, and they thought like, hey, let's film this, right? And I remembered these videos. I watched them when I was like, I think the timeline would be I was around like 10 years old, kind of like preteen years, and I love these videos. I thought they were so cute. So as soon as I saw the trailer for this, and I didn't hear anything about this until I watched the trailer for it during another movie that I saw this week, and instantly I was like, I have to see this movie, because it brought me back to that. Like, this is the kind of film that I'd want to make, and I was always kind of replicating when I'm like telling my siblings, hey, do this over here, and I had my little YouTube channel where I put ridiculous stuff up, and I mean, nothing close to the skill in those shorts nor in this movie, but those, doing something cute, doing something funny, something kind of different, like it's a shell with a googly eye and little Barbie doll sneakers, like it's just kind of, it's cute, right?
Yeah.
Kind of weird. So I loved kind of going back to that stage of my life through this movie.
How did you feel it? If I can jump in with a question,
Do
how did you feel like the feature length interpretation of the character and the story compared to the shorter YouTube shorts? Because
Yeah.
that was one thing that I was kind of wondering about, especially in terms of holding the attention of younger kids. But I'll see what you think first, because I think you've seen a lot more of the original stuff as well.
Yeah, no, I've seen all those videos, and it kind of felt like this movie was sort of the behind the scenes of what the shorts would be. So you know how they're uploading videos and everything, and you see little snippets, and that's all it was. Were basically just these little comedic bits of like, oh, I pretend I have a dog, but it's just a piece of lint that I pull on a string, and then you see a clip of him pulling lint on a string, and that's the bit. And then we move on to the next little comment. So like kind of the opening is very much like that, and I love how Fleischer-Camp's character, who was kind of this narrator, this filmmaker in the shorts, how, you know, at first he says, oh, I don't want to be in this, this is about you, but we start to learn a lot about him, and so it was very much a lore building kind of experience, where you get to see more of Marcel's world, how he lives, the relationship he has with this narrator who's filming him for some weird reason. So I really liked that, how they adapted that. So, and I think it made it so it could justify the full length, because they were like
Yeah.
3-minute videos before, but to really
Right.
stretch it out to a full, what was it, hour and a half, 2 hours?
It was an hour and a half.
Okay.
It was an hour and a half. No, and that's why I say, like, because I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was very, very, very cute, very, very sweet. The only thing that I wonder is, it almost seems to be a little bit more geared towards adults, in that it's kind of intellectual, and it's very kind of dry and slow paced, and being kind of like the documentary, almost like you say, kind of the behind the scenes. I kind of left it thinking, well, I think my older nieces would probably enjoy this, but my younger ones would probably just, they might enjoy the character initially for a few minutes, but after a while I think they would probably lose interest.
I think I think you're right there. It's totally clean for kids. Like, I mean, young kids could totally do
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
It
for
feels
sure.
like it could be like a my first documentary kind of a deal, where it's like, and I do think it's great for kids who have that kind of imagination. Like, that's why it captured my attention when I was in those preteen years, and I'm like, ooh, I like making these videos. This is fun, because it feels so real, but it kind of requires that little bit of imagination. It's a little creative, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's a great way to combine those two worlds to kind of, for kids who are kind of more transitioning into something that's a little more intellectual, a little
So
more.
so maybe older kids, yeah, would
Yeah.
appreciate it most.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
That's
I could see that.
that's the feeling that I had.
I
I mean, I fully expect this thing to be nominated for an Oscar. I would be
Oh, I
really
hope
surprised
so.
if it didn't get at least a nomination for
It's just
the
hard
best
because
animated feature.
they don't know how to categorize themselves. Like, it's something that's kind of been said with all the like press junkets. Is just like, maybe documentary, but like maybe animation, but maybe like, because it's kind of this hybrid of everything. So if they created a new category, it's just
well, it wouldn't.
Marcel. He
Yeah,
deserves it.
I think it wouldn't
So
be a
good.
documentary, right? Since it's
No,
not, but
but it's not
an
mockumentary. I
animation.
don't know.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen the shorts. I remember watching those when they came out and
Yeah,
thinking they were really
yeah.
clever and cute. And I kind of, when I heard that this was a feature length movie, I kind of wondered, can they do enough in an hour and a half? And apparently they can. Like they can stretch it out and make a good little story out of it. It sounds like. So I look forward to seeing it
I mean,
too.
I think it could have been 10 minutes shorter and still been
Yeah.
fine.
I
I
agree.
mean,
Yeah.
it didn't. I don't necessarily think that it dragged,
Hmm.
but I don't think that it had to be as long as it was. And I think that if they had tightened it up a little bit, it might have had a little bit more in terms of pacing. But either way, like, it's still, like I said, one way or the other, I would be very, very surprised if this did not get a nomination for Best Animation at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
like it when they reward new types of animation. You know,
Yeah.
like I was upset when Lego Movie didn't even get a nomination, and they joked about that at the Oscars. You know, because they got nominated for Best Song, but not for Best Animated Feature, and it was
Hmm.
kind of a shocker. Everybody just assumed that was
Mhm.
going to be in there, but then Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which is that claymation style animation, won that year, Best Animated
Ah,
Feature. So this sounds like the kind of thing they should recognize.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I wonder because there's so many aspects to it. I could see it going further than that because it's not all animation, and the way that it's done, like all I could think of, and like I agree with you, Josh, about like the pacing thing, where it's like they could make it shorter because there were some parts
Hmm.
where I felt like, oh, the movie's still going, but like I wouldn't know what to cut out because I liked how it was kind of slow and it built up like that, like just every moment where it was like a small lingering shot where it's like a little sigh or something, like it was
Yeah.
just cute. And something that I kept thinking about was that this just felt kind of like a ballet, where it's like the whole point of it about a ballerina really is like just so incredibly strong, and they have to do so much to make their dance look effortless, and like it just
Mm.
flows and that it's natural, even though like holding your body like that is just insane. And that's how the animation was in this, like it really felt like such a real world where it just blended in so well with
Yeah.
what actually
It was
existed.
very seamless.
Exactly, exactly. And they did a lot of really smart things with like objects moving around. So I think that made the animation a little easier. Like they could just move the object and you could
Oh
kind of
yeah.
use your imagination with that. But like it was so subtle, like what they were doing, but it
Hmm.
was so detailed, and like like it sounded like they had to put so much work into it. I went into a whole deep dive on it this afternoon. Just I'm like, did they actually do stop motion for this? Because like, I mean, it was clearly not CG because it looks so real
Right.
and oh my
Right.
goodness, so tangible, right? But I'm like, there's no way they could have, like, how would they have done it? But they totally did. And I just, that technical skill alone, like, I would love to see them go, not just be recognized for the animation, but like just the practical side of it. So, like, with, visual effects and like being a contender against all other top movies of the
Hmm.
year because there would have had to be so much work to incorporate that together.
No, that's a good point. I think that might be something to look for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have one movie that has restored your hope, but I think there are a couple more on the list, right?
Yep,
What else
definitely.
have we got, Danny? Should we get into the Austen-verse?
Well, and it's kind of great because, like, I mean, I was thinking, I'm like, these aren't really all connected, but like, these are all really sweet, family-friendly, PG kind of films, and maybe that's it. I haven't graduated to the PG-13 yet. I just need to stay here for a little bit. But yeah, and next up on our list, moving on, like you said, to the Austen stuff, is the newest adaptation of Persuasion. And for those who are unfamiliar with the story of it, there's Anne Elliot, our protagonist, who's played by Dakota Johnson, and she was persuaded 8 years ago to not marry Mr. Wentworth, the love of her life, because he wasn't this suitable, rich match. And her family being as conceited and wrap up in themselves as they are, even though Anne has this self awareness, she's still kind of, tied to these decisions and very depressed from it. But I'd seen this movie played very kind of heavy, but this movie was just so funny in kind of this silly way. Like it was definitely a different kind of style than I expected, which I'm really relieved for because something that made me really nervous seeing the trailer, and I think a lot of people have had these concerns, is that like there's a lot of like modern terms or like things being phrased a certain way where it's like, oh, that's not really faithful, to
Hmm.
the book and stuff like that. But it somehow it kind of works. And like I think just all these actors, they were given the opportunity to really show off their acting chops, their comedic abilities. Dakota Johnson was hilarious in it, and her father is played by Richard Grant, and he's just ridiculous and hilarious. I think the star of this was Mia McKenna Bruce, who I don't think I'd seen before, but she's been popping up in a lot of Netflix stuff. hilarious. I don't know if you felt that way, Mark, but like everything she said, it just killed me. And there were some things where it's like, would they have said that in the 1800s?
Yeah.
Probably not. But like they're very aware that the audience they're showing this for is in the 21st century. So while it's still like it doesn't pull you out completely, but there are jokes that are definitely for us the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So like one that I loved was like Anne's reminiscing about Wentworth, and she's like, he left me a playlist, and it's this stack of sheet music, and you know,
Yeah.
just kind of stuff like
I
that,
love
where it's
that.
like,
That was great.
yeah, yeah, and it kind of worked, and I loved the look of it. If you care about these period pieces, like the look, I think the costumes, the cinematography, like, you know, for a Netflix film, like I do think it was very pretty and very stylish. Like I think that's the whole thing, is very stylized, and it stayed true to that style, and so yeah, they made it work. What do you think of it, Mark?
So I when I first started watching it, and pretty soon in the movie, she breaks the fourth wall, and so I've heard
Oh
that
yeah.
what she does is similar to what Phoebe Waller-Bridges, I think that's her name, who does Fleabag, where she talks to
Mm-hmm.
the camera and kind of involves the audience directly in her thoughts and narrates it frequently. That kind of surprised me. And so, and I know that like, and maybe it leads to like a little bit of the broader Jane Austen conversation, and that when somebody's books and works have been adapted so many times, people want to give a fresh take on it and do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So the three major things I saw that were different from probably what the book is, and I've never even read the book. I haven't read any of the Jane Austen books. Kind of like Josh was saying, I don't think I've read any of them. But there's the breaking the fourth wall, and I thought that was she did a really good job with that. Even though yes, it was
Oh my
a little
goodness.
awkward and
Yeah.
it was a little at first. It's like, oh yeah, she's talking to us, because it starts out with voiceover narration, but then after a couple minutes, you learn it's actually direct camera narration. But at the beginning, they're just showing other scenes while she's
Well,
talking.
I mean, I
Uh,
do think that like when like we start with her talking to the camera. Like I mean, I know
yeah,
it's like the voiceover with the
right,
clips,
right.
but the first time we see her in the present, I think it's she's talking to the camera.
It, I think
So it kind of does set
I
it up
think you're
early
right.
on.
I from what I remember, it starts with showing her, because I mean I think you started saying the plot that with the it
Mm,
starts out 7 years after she was persuaded, and it was kind of by her mother's friend, not as much her family, but pretty much all of them, to break up with this
yeah.
Navy officer, because he wasn't rich
Hmm.
enough, but she was in love, and the sad thing was he knew why she broke up with her, and so then when he comes back into her life, is are they going to be able to move on, or is it just never going to work, kind of a thing. So like, yeah,
Hmm.
she talks to the camera and she does these little like nods and asides and winks. I mean, some of those I kind of liked. It actually reminded me of The Office, even, like where
Oh
Jim looks
yeah,
at the
no, no,
camera
there are
just to
definitely some
like
like gym
give a
moments where it's
Jim
like,
look,
man, my sister's
roll his eyes. Yeah.
stupid. Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny. And then she has this almost like emotional support bunny. And I don't know if that's in the novel, but that was kind of funny. And then
I don't remember a bunny, so
right.
I did
The
love
the
that.
other two, I think, anachronistic pieces of the movie were that they cast black actors and actresses to be members of the family, and so that was a little bit like it felt kind of maybe more deliberate than I wanted to feel. Like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing an updated version, so we're going to do this. But in my mind, I'm thinking this is from the 1830s in England, and it's not how it would have been, but it's what they chose
Hmm.
to do. And then for the film today, and then the other thing was, yeah, they did come up with some phrases that are for the modern, for Gen Z, like the modern generation. So
Yeah,
they never made
like
it obvious.
Marion, the whole like self love,
Self
self
love, single
care.
and thriving. Like
Yeah.
she kind of sarcastically says she's single and thriving, and she's drinking a bottle of wine
Yeah.
just sitting there. Like she's really not thriving. She's still unhappy because she's pining for her lost
Yep.
love. But like they
Yep.
didn't ever make it super obvious. Like they didn't make a pop culture reference from 2020 or
No,
anything. It was
no.
more just little turns of phrases that probably were not in the Austen book. Um,
Hmm.
so I thought it was fine. The main chemistry, it was hard for me to buy. I mean, because you look at Dakota Johnson, and she is like stunningly beautiful, like a perfect 10, and then the guy that she's supposedly in love with, who is, they keep talking about how handsome he is, and he just doesn't have much of a personality, and maybe that's
Oh,
part of
Mark,
it.
That's so funny because I actually think Dakota Johnson was the perfect cast because I think she's actually kind of plain.
Oh,
But like
really?
in Hollywood's eyes, she's plain. Like that's the whole reason she was cast for 50 Shades was like because she had this every girl look, and so like I kind of saw that. Although I do think she's dressed up in the movie, like she's got lipstick on, she's looking good, right?
I think we should have
But I
Josh
mean,
settle this.
I
Is Dakota Johnson
no no no
beautiful
no no. But
or
here's the thing:
plain?
as the girl,
Speaking of The Office, what was it?
It was
Who was
Hillary
the actress
Swank.
that they were
Hillary Swank,
that
and they
Hillary
all
Swank
voted
debate?
on it, and it was like almost a tie.
That's right.
oh my goodness. No, no,
That's
but like
funny.
as a girl, I
That's
just
really
think it's
funny.
funny that you say that because I find Dakota Johnson kind of on the plain side, but
Wow.
I thought Wentworth was kind of hunky.
Okay, well, see,
Yeah.
and I was gonna say, I'm sure you enjoyed the movie better than I did. The movie really wasn't made for me. A 40-something guy who's never read a Jane Austen book. So but the other problem was, and I actually texted you guys about that this week. I saw an absolutely like brilliant masterpiece of a movie just this past week, and it was The Little Women. So I think in my mind I sort of kept comparing these old period piece movies, Little Women from 2019 and Persuasion from 2022, and it was just there just to me wasn't much of a comparison. But I Persuasion definitely had its moments, and it had I thought I like a lot of great lines, lots of funny lines. Like I said, the fourth wall breaking sort of narration style was pretty funny. I was worried it would pull me out. Kind of like it's you want to be lost in the story. You want to just be transported back to the early 1800s and just get lost and figure out, who you're going to identify with and who you're going to root for. But like there are scenes where she gets pretty emotional. She's like straight up
Yeah.
crying and then she's
Yeah.
looking at the camera, almost like rolling her eyes and like sighing and it's part of the story. I mean, she's narrating it sort of as it's happening to her, and then she's crying, and so it's not just all sort of like a wink and I'm trying to be funny. It's like this is my life kind of. So I thought she did excellent in it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, she did a great job, and I think this was a great role for her to get because I'd seen her in like on Jimmy Fallon and stuff like that, and she can be very funny.
Okay.
It's just she hasn't had a lot of opportunity to do that, and I thought she did great in this, but also showing like you said that range. There were a lot of great choreographed like longer shots
Hmm.
where the camera will like kind of be focused on her and she has her little like fourth wall break, but then also people are coming in and then they leave and she's kind of looks over at the camera, like there was a lot of good movement with that, and with that the character is kind of changing in emotion and expression as the scene is going along, instead of just like, okay, we're gonna get this 3-second shot of you looking sad and now another 3-second shot of you looking happy. It was kind of that flow, and it really shows that she's got a lot of talent, so I thought that was
It's and it
this was a great role for
The
her.
thing I like too is it is a character you want to root for. I mean, it's a lot of
Yeah.
these like the Little Women and the Jane Austen characters, and they're these independent women who are, and I keep hearing this about because it's in Little Women too, about how marriage is transactional for women, and I'm starting to wonder if that's just an undercurrent, like a running theme through all Austen books about the transactional nature of marriage for these genteel even the upper class women in the early 1800s.
Well, are you aware of the opening line for Pride and
Yes,
Prejudice?
yeah, the famous opening,
That a
right,
rich man is in want of a
right,
wife,
right.
like
A
it's
truth
just
universally acknowledged. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of the
yeah.
famous opening line. And so there's some similarities to that and
Yeah.
Persuasion. But she also isn't just like there to be sort of a sitting, what do you call it, like a wallflower that's just waiting for marriage to happen. Like she does a lot of good. And even though she's sort of
Yeah.
suffering and almost like grieving, because that's really what love lost is, it's sort of grief, an extended 7-year period of grief. She does a lot of good for her family and she sacrifices for them. And she kind of like, she has the one that you were talking about. That's the funny sister. I mean, she's a funny actress, but she plays kind of a horrible character who's
Oh, she's terrible.
narcissistic.
She's the
But
worst.
then,
Yeah.
and so Anne, the main character, is saying, well, she actually likes to be there because she can just sit and listen to her, and then this narcissist loves to hear herself talk, but she's also company for Anne. But Anne does help out, like
Yeah, and she loves her nephews. She's
right,
so cute with the
yeah,
nephews. Like, yeah, no, there's a lot she's doing. She helps someone else who's experiencing grief. Like, there's this really nice moment where they're talking about poetry, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, you know what? That's nice for a grieving heart, but it's only gonna like make you sink further."
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it was
the
very very
doctor.
good scene.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then like
and
her kind of
yeah,
she has a great conversation that leads to a key moment with with her former lover making a decision that's like an overheard conversation that shows her just real heart, kind of bearing her heart to a friend about
hmm,
how men and women love differently. So yeah, I thought it was
yeah,
well written, and I assume most of it was really from Austen, and maybe a little bit updated, adapted,
yeah.
modernized, but most of it I felt because I've heard she's such a great writer, and I've known some of the lines, from Pride and Prejudice that it's probably a great one. And I read that it was posthumously published, so that one was after she died when it came out. That the
Oh
book
wow.
Persuasion, and she'd only written 6 books, so all of them have been made into movies. Like
Hmm. Many times
many
over.
times, yeah. She died at 41, and there's many adaptations of her works, especially the main, Pride and Prejudice. I think it's probably the main one. But I haven't. Have you seen any other versions of Persuasion?
Yeah, no, there's a BBC version. Like, I mean, I'll probably talk about this more with just more of the deep dive kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like, there was a time where we just rented like every version of like basically every classic literature adaptation, but especially from Jane Austen, and most of them BBC related. And I think in the 90s, around then, they were
They were
just
doing a lot.
doing a whole slew of them,
Yeah.
and just absolutely fabulous.
There was a.
But like I said, it was more serious, and like it plays into that part of like Anne being depressed a little more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
BBC version of Persuasion that some people count as a theatrical release because apparently it was released in the U.S. for a very, very short time, but it was made by the BBC, and I think it was from the mid '90s. Um, but yeah,
For that one.
I've not seen that one. So this was my
Yeah.
introduction to the story.
No, I loved everything you shared. You sound so prepared. I love this.
And on the flip side,
Oh, sorry, I
Josh,
spoke too soon.
I did not see Persuasion. Nevertheless, I do feel very confident that it will be the front runner this year for the award for film that has a title that sounds like a perfume.
that's right.
Persuasion by
Yeah,
Dakota Johnson.
Yeah,
Like it
it'll have
totally.
Johnny Depp or somebody will be in black and
Persuasion.
white and like staring off into the incoming tide while seagulls flow by
And
and something else inexplicable
it'll be a
happens.
little.
See that
Persuasion.
Yeah.
that's what Netflix needs to do for their promotion. Not only do they need to be doing the billboards and the these other promotional stuff, they need to have their own fragrance lines to promote their
There we go.
movies.
Hmm.
There we go.
Yeah.
See, we're figuring it all out.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so what's the other one, Danny? There's two, right?
Yeah. No, well, it's interesting that Mark said that about like the whole how they're kind of changing up like some of the race things, because it's a trend that has been going on for a long time, with a lot of these new adaptations, and I think a lot of it is making things new and making it more, I don't know, relatable to just everybody, but like what. And I know there could be the argument of it feels like it's checkboxes, but what I have seen, especially in the ones that have been really good. So I'm thinking like David Copperfield with Doug Patel,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
Bridgerton, of course, is a very popular one. But like, I think what it's kind of opened up is this opportunity for let the best actor have the role, which is what I'm seeing. Like I'm seeing incredible performances in these kind of movies, and why I'm really excited to talk about this movie is like this movie is probably, it's not like my Danny critic pick, but like Danny, just like personally who I am, this is my top pick of the year just because it really honed in on those characters and those performances were just amazing in Mr. Malcolm's List. So just to kind of break down what it's all about, if you haven't seen, trailers popping up everywhere. Synopsis kind of goes like, when Julia Thistlethwaite is humiliated over being publicly slighted by a wealthy, honorable Mr. Malcolm, she enlists her cousin and childhood friend Selena to use Mr. Malcolm's list of requirements for a wife against him. And drama ensues, kind of, like it's very, it's very playful with that premise. but in a way that provides, you know, again, a lot of that social critique, which is important for this genre. Um, and it's very interesting what they did here in that, you know, they were able to stay true to a lot of these period romance tropes, and kind of characterization, but like in a way where it didn't ever feel tropey, like they were making it their own. You know, there's this one part that I'm thinking of in particular where like a truth is revealed, and I'm like, oh, here's our third act conflict. And the way that they handled it, I just did not expect it to go that way. And it was a decision that made me just like the characters more and make me want to root for them more. And I'm like, that's just great writing, you know? So, like, overall, big story picture, great writing, but all the interactions, just these beautiful, beautiful one-liners that I can't stop saying because they're just so snappy and fun. Um, in particular, this friend who comes up with this scheme, her delivery with every line is just like, with every facial expression, just so much personality. And I think everyone just like, you know, really wanted to flesh out these characters and bring them to life in every single line. You know, some characters do good things, some of them do not so great things, and but you know, you like them anyways because you understand, like, oh, they're human and they're having these emotions, and you can understand and identify with them. So, just like, you know, it was just a perfect, you know, new kind of story that kind of embodies a lot of these, you know, very familiar kind of tales. But it's also just, I think, a great movie overall. So like, it doesn't rely too much on it just being this gushy romance kind of story. Like, it's just great and fun. Like, it was a packed theater when I went, and it's been out for a couple weeks, and everyone was laughing the whole way through. You know, it was a great time. And I do want to be careful in saying that it is funny, because it's funny in a different way than Persuasion. This one is a little more authentic, where it's like, you know, they're not throwing out kind of modern terms. It's very, very much still that period piece.
Or organically funny?
Yeah,
or naturally
yeah.
funny? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Persuasion was too, but like, it's very clever and witty. It's a little more thought with that one. But I don't think it was hard to understand either. But
So which one would you recommend first? If somebody could only see one or the other, and then, you know, like, I mean, just for the sake of comparison, did you find yourself enjoying one more than the other, or are they just two different movies that, you
yeah.
know, hit you in different ways that you just enjoyed and for different reasons?
Yeah, no, they totally hit in different ways, and I think it depends on the person and the situation of like what they're wanting. But like, for the higher quality film, for that more authentic experience, like, I mean, definitely Mr. Malcolm's List. Like I'm saying, like, this is my favorite movie that's come out so far this year. Like, it's so well done, especially on that writing and performance aspect, and that's what I'm looking for the most when it comes to a movie. So
Where do you
yeah, I'd probably pick this one.
where do you rank Marcel? Would you put that behind Malcolm's List or behind Persuasion?
As a Jane Austen interpretation, where do you rank Marcel the
No,
Shell with
I
shoes
mean
on?
just for 2022 for your yearly
But I mean,
list.
Oh,
at
sorry,
that
Mark. Never-
at that point, it is so different that it's hard to compare. I would say Mr. Malcolm's List is going to be easier for a full audience, because I do think the pacing with Marcel, like, it makes it a little harder for people to stay super invested in the whole time. Whereas Mr. Malcolm's List, like, that plot is like, you know, moving along, not like, you know, neck breaking speed or anything, but in a way where it's like you are very invested the entire time, and it's like, ooh, I really want to know what happens next. Or like, I went out to see it with a friend of mine, and she and I the entire time were like, ooh, the tea, the gossip, the, you know, like, we were just so into like every little just juicy detail there. So, you know, that keeps it, I think, a little more entertaining. Marcel's definitely up there now too, because like, like I said, technical level, unbelievable. And this one, like, it didn't look super hard to film. Like you know, wardrobe of course is always going to be a big deal, and the sets, scenery was beautiful. That's always important. Um, but like you know, it didn't take them like 3 years to make it, which is what it sounded like happened with Marcel.
The thing, and it sounds like that's kind of shining through in how you talk about these movies, but they should be like, I don't know, like warm and comfortable and non-offensive, but also like draw you into this world, like all encompassing, like you want to be part of this world. And you talked about the cinematography and the costuming and just the manners and the gossip, because often they are sort of comedies, or comedy slash dramas of manners, of how we're supposed to behave in this society or how people are expected to behave, and sometimes maybe they subvert those expectations. But it is a nice thing when you can go to a movie and it's like I think pretty much all the movies we've talked about today are like PG. Like there's really not going to be something offensive.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the kids are going to love it, but there's not going to be anything that's going to be like, you better turn your eyes or go to bed. Like it's something that they could watch. Now, my kids wouldn't probably watch Persuasion, and I don't really expect them to. But at least it's a PG movie. It's definitely like in that same alley. Probably like Marcel as well, I'm assuming. But wasn't Marcel a PG movie?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, totally.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, the question I had, so similar to what I was talking about before. So if Mr. Malcolm's List is the better of the two, or maybe the more authentic of the two Jane Austen adaptations, how do these rank with all of your favorite Jane Austen?
Well, do we need to start doing a deeper dive so I can
Well,
explain all of what I'm looking for?
I think what we want to
everything?
know is where is Clueless?
Where's Clueless on my list? You know what? Funny enough, I haven't seen Clueless.
Oh, okay.
See,
okay.
I felt, as I was kind of like breaking things apart and categorizing everything, I like my list of like classic faithful adaptations is like infinitely longer than like modern adaptations or oddballs. Like, I wonder, Mark, if maybe, kind of like how you guys picked apart me in animation, you're kind of also revealing something about my need for 1800 escapism, like
Yeah.
maybe it's something I'm longing for. I was just born in the wrong era. That's what it is.
I think I could see that, because there's a certain, I don't know, I kind of use the word comfort again, but like something that my wife likes to watch, for example, like if let's say she's sick, just not feeling it and needs to just watch something to help her feel good, is Anne of Green Gables. Like those kind of things.
Oh,
right? I knew that would get a reaction out of
next time your wife is sick, I'm coming over. I will bring soup and everything if I can just watch Anne of Green Gables with her. Oh my goodness, those ones are great.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love, that classic literature adaptations. Charles Dickens is one of my all-time favorite authors, so anytime I see anything of his, love that. So yeah, no, I don't know if it's just an exposure thing. Like I said, we did Uber marathons when I was a kid for all these things, and I read so many of them growing up. Like I have a lot of Austen and Dickens, and I even have Little Women on my bookshelf here, Jane Eyre, which I've read like all of these ones. I have so many books I haven't read, but like those ones definitely.
Let me ask you this: did you see Love and Friendship?
Yes.
I've heard that's a great one. That one is one of the ones that always rates highly among the Austen.
That's one of the few Austen films that I've seen.
Yeah.
I remember watching that one a few years ago. Kate Beckinsale was great in that one.
Okay.
It's just kind of this. I don't remember a ton about the plot, but I remember her playing just kind of this, calculating. She's the bad guy.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, as far as these movies have bad guys, right? And
Very
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it was clever and witty. Like I really enjoyed how funny it was. It was not a laugh out loud type funny, and maybe this is more similar to what you're describing with Mr. Malcolm's List, where it's like it's a funny movie, but people aren't like throwing out one-liners and you know,
Yeah.
you're not expecting rim shots off the,
Hmm.
you know, on the soundtrack. But that was a funny one.
Yeah.
That was,
No,
and it
no,
was, and
absolutely.
it was a good one, and it was a
The
good one.
purpose isn't to make a comedy. Like they're not set out to make a
Yeah.
comedy, but they're to make a good movie and include clever, witty, lines in it or whatever.
Yeah.
Or
Hmm.
And a lot of it is the commentary, right?
right.
Like I said with the opening line in Pride and Prejudice, right? Like,
Hmm.
and that's like a huge kind of, um, I mean, that's the whole motivation of Mrs. Bennet's character, right? Is the whole like, oh, everyone must be married, especially to rich men. Like,
Hmm.
like it right off the bat, it's making those social commentary statements, and they just happen to be put in a very humorous way. Love and Friendship was very fun, and I feel like that's even though it's very classic and faithful in some ways, that's kind of more of that oddball, which it was written by Austen, but kind of as a to make fun of the genre. So
Hmm.
that's why the main character is kind of antagonistic, and um, I remember the ending. I was just kind of like, what? But it was because it's making fun of itself, right?
Uh,
So,
Hmm.
oh, those
nice.
are good. Yeah. So something that I brought up in my Mr. Malcolm's List review, which can be found on the Utah.film website. Um, it's just that, like, things I'm looking for, like, and now I guess I have to add, like, the look of it and the sincerity and the escapism part of it, but I really care about a lot of the longing, the emotions, and then the wit. So those are important things to it. And oh, another note that I added, I think the reason why Jane Austen works like this is that she's Shakespeare kind of in another era, where it's
Hmm.
like here are these classic stories that are recognizable and they can be molded in so many different ways, um, with different backdrops, different time periods, kind of like what we've seen with Shakespeare, right?
Hmm.
That's why I think Clueless kind of feels like a lot of those other what were they? There was like a whole era in the 90s where they were remaking Shakespeare movies, kind of like 10 Things I Hate About
I
You
was
and
gonna
stuff like
say,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's another one that sprung to mind, but I thought, oh, that's a Shakespeare adaptation, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But
Yeah.
but it works in the same way, right?
Well, and I think the reason for that is, and my guess, you know, without being a student or any kind of an expert on Jane Austen, the impression that I've gotten just from what I've heard from other people and from the few movies of hers, you know, that I've seen, is that you know she's tapping into fairly universal themes and be you know behaviors of human nature, right? That are very universal and relatable. And so whether they're happening in the 19th century, whether they're happening in Shakespeare's time, or whether they're happening at a high school in the 1990s, you're going to connect with it because people
Mm-hmm.
are people, and people have always been people. And it seems like Austen just kind of has a knack for kind of digging into the foibles
Yeah.
of human nature that are very defining. Um, okay, so I mean, just for the sake of the audience, we probably don't want to go too much longer.
Yeah, no, that's
But
fair.
could you, on the spot, give us your top three Jane Austen adaptations?
Dang, I wrote 5. Okay. Phew. So, hmm, I'll
Because
do.
I think I've only seen three total, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know
No, no,
that
no,
I
it's all
can.
good. I will give a shout out to the oddball Pride and Prejudice and Zombies because because zombies were so popular then, right? And I loved seeing the same kind of lines, but they kind of hit different with that different backdrop. And
Hmm.
yeah, I loved the performances in that one. So that one was fun. Um, ooh, I can't choose between these 4. I'm gonna do 4. Sorry about that. I think this is the worst story, but best execution that I have seen. Just like directing, and I think it was kind of the same way that Persuasion was, and the kind of that fourth wall break sort of feel. Mansfield Park,
Hmm.
terrible storyline. I was explaining it to Ryan after we watched Persuasion, and I'm like, and then this happens in the end, and I'm like, what was the point of anything else that happened in the story? But like the directing and everything, it was beautiful. I loved it. Um, I I love Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, Hugh Grant, Alan Rickman. I think the thing that I love most about it though is that the quips in that one, I just hear my dad's voice. I think it's his favorite, but I always hear him saying like, "How's the invalid?" and stuff like that, you know. So I don't know. I think there's kind of that connection I feel with him. With my mom, it's more the 5-hour BBC version of Pride and Prejudice, which is just classic, peak Austen, so faithful. Colin Firth, what more could you ask for, you know?
Well, that one really seems like the
standard bearer.
most celebrated.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
right. Because
it's
without
the best.
no,
It's
I
so
mean,
good.
without having seen it, I mean, I'm sure I've caught bits and pieces just because it's been on so frequently,
Mhm.
or that people I know have been watching it so frequently. But it just far and away seems like if you're going to hold up any adaptation, TV series, movie, whatever, of a Jane Austen, you know, book, the multi-part BBC Pride and Prejudice is one A, one B, one C, and then everything else just kind of falls in its wake.
Oh, well, absolutely. I watch it like every year around my birthday because no one can argue with me, and I'm like, we're watching this now. So I love that one. And then
You
just
make your family watch the whole thing?
yes,
Wow.
you wouldn't watch just one of them. It's like watching just one of the Lord of the Rings movies. You
I'm not
don't do
saying that. I'm
that.
just saying, like, on my birthday, I can barely get people to watch one movie that I like, let alone, you said
But that's
5 hours?
the thing. It's so good that like people and I mean really it feels like it goes by a lot faster than it is. Probably because like sometimes I'll skip or I'll like fast forward through the like intro and hurry over to the next episode before like the credits roll. So it feels more like you know 45-minute
So it's 4
episodes.
hours and 55 minutes instead of.
Exactly,
There we
exactly.
go.
Hardly notice
Gotcha.
it.
Okay.
Um,
So your Mount Rushmore of Jane Austen adaptations includes two Pride and Prejudice movies, right?
oh, because Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
yeah,
only
Pride and
six.
Prejudice.
Really, there's only six novels to choose from, so you might as
Yeah,
well.
and I feel like that one's the most popular. Darcy's just iconic.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like Lizzie Bennett? She's just, quick and snappy. Like
You
she's
call her
so
Lizzie?
fun. Huh?
Lizzie Bennett.
You call her Lizzie?
She is Lizzie Bennett, okay? I imagine the sisters like Lizzie. Okay. Anyhow,
And
but my top pick. That's just probably because I don't know. It resonates most with me. I love the story of Emma. I feel like I've kind of been that person like meddling in other people's lives, and I'm like, I'll never get married. I'm too bound to my duty to my family. I'm much too prominent of a figure in the community, but I'm gonna like match people up together, and then she fails like really really bad trying to do it right and
So which version are you? Because there's multiple
yeah
versions, right?
so I love the story of it, but the version of it that I love the most, and the hard thing is that it came out the same year as the Gwyneth Paltrow version, but this was a BBC version same year,
Ah, okay.
with Kate Beckinsale and Mark Strong. So Kate Beckinsale, that's why she was the pick for Love and Friendship, is to kind of like because she was in these kind of ones. Mark Strong as Mr. Knightley, like I love Mr. Darcy character, but once I started getting into Emma, I realized like I'm more into like a Mr. Knightley, like someone who's kind of challenging the protagonist to like, be better. Like he expects her to improve herself and for him to improve too. Like I loved their dynamic so much, and that one in particular, it's super super fun, and it's not 5 hours long, so it's a little easier to go back to if I don't have the time to go to Pride and Prejudice. But
Nice.
yeah, that would
Nice.
be all of them. I don't know how Mr. Malcolm would rank with all of them. I feel like I'm gonna add it to my collection, and so it's like, this one I've already been planning when I'm gonna see it next in theaters with like my husband and some friends. And I think once I own it and I'm seeing it more often, maybe it'll be a part of that birthday marathon. I'm not sure. So I could see it rising in the ranks.
Very
But
cool.
yeah.
Very cool. Okay, well there you go. That's a whole lot of Jane Austen for the Utah Film Pod, but I think some good quality stuff. I mean, all jokes and stuff aside, I've liked every Jane Austen thing I've ever seen.
You just
And
need to watch
so
more. That's what we're
I,
learning here.
well, I can't argue against that. I can't say that I'm going to follow through anytime soon, but I also can't argue against it. And so uh, definitely kind of a fun, and frankly, I just kind of enjoy not talking about Marvel movies and superhero
Oh my
movies in an
goodness, it was
episode,
so
right?
nice.
So here's a little, let's call it a little more of a sophisticated turn in the Utah Film Pod today as we delve into the world of Jane Austen and stop motion animation and and some conspiracy theories about Top Gun. Yeah. So thanks for watching as always. Now we already know that Danny, you mentioned that you got an article up on Mr. Malcolm's list.
Hmm.
And so check that out on the website. Anything else we decide to put on the website in the meantime. But yeah, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Spotify, wherever if you're on iTunes, give us a big shout out and a review. Send us some comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we will look forward to hearing from you and giving you more next time.